This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Podcast was paid for by Huber Engineered Woods, one of our advertisers. Homebuilding Crossroads, an educational webinar series sponsored by Zip System Building Enclosures and Advantech Subfloor Assemblies, brings the best speakers in the industry to discuss building science and help you walk away with real solutions to the building issues you're facing. Christine Williamson, president of Building Science Fight Club, will present her course, Airtight Done Right, on 2 dates in December. Tuesday, December 15th, and again on December 17th. Airtight Done Right highlights small design adjustments using standard materials that architects and builders can immediately make to improve airtightness and energy efficiencies in residential design. For more information and to register, visit zipsystem.homebuildingcrossroads.com.
That's where companies like Huber and organizations like IBHS can do a lot and are doing a lot to make sure that people are in the know. And then when it comes time to the installation, oftentimes it takes just as long to install it wrong as it does to install it correctly.
Welcome to a special edition of the Fine Homebuilding Podcast. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Matt Minchew, General Manager for Zip System Roof Applications, and Fred Malik, Managing Director of Fortified Building Products at the Institute for Business and Home Safety. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Podcast and the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. It is a pleasure to meet you, gentlemen. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Patrick.
Yeah, hi, Patrick. It's nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. Can both of you please explain to me your respective jobs? Fred, you go first. For starters, what is the Institute for Business and Home Safety?
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So IBHS is a nonprofit organization. We are a building science organization as well, and we are funded 100% by property insurers and reinsurers. They pay dues to IBHS so we can figure out the hard problems of why buildings come apart in severe weather. And so we do a lot of different things. We use post-damage investigations, collaborations with industry and manufacturers like Matt and Huber. And we also partner with academia to figure out these complex issues around home performance. And then from there, we take all of those lessons that we learn and we have to do something with them. We have to make it so people can do something with all that great stuff that we learn. And that's where Fortified comes in. And so Fortified is a set of building standards that we put together. They're voluntary. They work alongside the building code. We were talking just a few minutes ago about how over the last 10 years, we've now grown our fortified homes and commercial buildings to 21,000 families and businesses that live under fortified roofs and in fortified buildings.
So what exactly are the fortified elements, if you could tell me briefly, or does it vary based on what part of the home we're talking about?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we purposefully made the standard in such a way so that it's accessible to both new and existing construction. And so we broke it up into chunks. There's 3 primary chunks. That is fortified roof. That's the entry level. Every home, every commercial building that participates has a fortified roof. Why did we start there? Well, through all that research that we've done, we know that the roof is a primary driver of loss. And what we're talking about when I say things like loss, that means there are people who are suffering unnecessarily when their houses come apart or they allow water to get in. And we want to try and minimize that to the fullest extent that we can. Once you have fortified the roof, you've taken off a big driver of loss. Then we can start to look at other things like openings, windows, doors, garage doors. They tend to be amplifiers of loss. So when those systems fail, they put an unnecessary stress on the building, and that's when we start to see bigger problems happen. And then the final step, and at that level, that second level is called silver. The final step is fortified gold, and that's where we look at something called the continuous load path. That's what we're looking at. How does the house tie together from the roof down through the walls and into the foundation, taking all the loads that are getting applied to that house and getting them into the ground? Those are the 3 steps to fortified: roof, silver, and gold.
Interesting. So, Matt, can you please explain to me what you do for Huber? And maybe first you could talk about Huber products for those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with them.
Sure, thanks. So Huber is a family-owned company. We were started in the late 1800s, and since then we've grown to include a portfolio of three diverse businesses that have a multinational presence. One of those businesses is Huber Engineered Woods. That's where I work, and we're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we've got manufacturing facilities in several parts of the U.S. And we manufacture high-performance roof, wall, and subflooring products that are used primarily in residential construction. And some of our better-known brands include Zip System and Advantech.
Are they all panel products, or do you guys make other things too?
Combination of panel products and then different types of products that are used for flashing and sealing as well.
Sure. Interestingly, in deciding what we would talk about today, you guys clued me into a new code provision in Connecticut, and I presume other places, that I didn't know about. Can you talk about the code provision we were mentioning?
Sure. I'll take the first run at that, and then Matt can add on to it if he likes. So there's a concept in the Fortified standard called sealed roof deck. So that's part of Fortified Roof. And the basic premise is, unfortunately, roof covers fail. They fail routinely. It can be for a variety of reasons, whether it's product limitations, installation issues, or just plain old weathering and aging. When those covers start to fail, it exposes the underlayment. The underlayments are, traditionally just designed to be there as a bond break and as a barrier between the cover and the roof deck right before that roof cover gets installed. But one of the things that we know for sure is that if that cover fails, that underlayment goes right with it. And that exposes the deck, and that leads to massive amounts of water intrusion. We can have significant amounts of disruption and financial loss for homeowners simply by water getting into the building. Forget about structural damage. Most of the losses come in when water gets in the house. Matter of fact, over 90% of reported losses during a severe weather event involve roof damage in some form or fashion. And so what Connecticut did was they looked at the science. They looked at some of the things that we do, and we've been sort of advocating for the last 10 years, and they incorporated a sealed roof deck method into the Connecticut Building Code. They are a part of an emerging group. Alabama took the lead on this several years ago. They incentivized people to build to fortified roof. Then they put it into their coastal building codes. We have seen other jurisdictions, most recently, the Florida Building Code, the 2021 version of the Florida Building Code now includes sealed roof deck. The 2021 version of the International Residential Code now includes sealed roof deck. So Connecticut is in that group of folks that have taken the step to take that area of loss and do something about it.
So Matt, what do you do at Huber, and how does it relate to this sealed roof system?
Sure. So I'm general manager of Zip System Roof Applications, and the Zip System product line, for anybody who's not familiar with it, combines a structural panel and then an overlay that satisfies the needs for a WRB or a roofing underlayment per the IRC. And so basically you've got a combination of a structural panel and that additional overlay built into one product. And when you seal the seams with our flashing tape, that meets the sealed roof deck requirement that Fred described. So it's not the only way to seal a roof deck, but it eliminates some room for complexity that comes from putting additional layers on top of the structural roof deck. So the Zip System panel can be used in wall or roof applications, and personally I oversee the roof application.
Fred, you touched on it a little bit. So what is it about the sealed roof deck that helps the home survive a high wind event or a storm better than if it didn't have that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I mean, over 90% of insured claims involve some sort of roof damage, and the bulk of those mean that some of the roof cover has failed and water has gotten in. And that I just came back from Sally. We had about 17,000 homes that were exposed to Sally in the coastal area of Alabama. And the amount of just disruption and loss there is crazy. When you drive through neighborhood after neighborhood and you see people's belongings out at the street, I mean, we're talking about carpet, doors, any soft goods. I mean, mattresses, clothing, all of that stuff ends up out at the curb. And as a builder for 25 plus years, I mean, it hurts, because we have the job of providing shelter. I mean, we're trying to protect people from elements, and so looking for ways to mitigate that is what really drives me to do what I do. But your question was really about how does the sealed roof deck reduce that? Well, we've done testing. I don't know if your listeners and viewers are aware, but IBHS has a world-class research facility located in South Carolina. It's a giant wind tunnel. We have the ability to build full-size houses. We can put 9 full-size houses into this.
I've seen you blow them over, Fred. It's pretty dramatic.
And so one of the things that we do in that space, we can recreate actual wind records, and we can recreate the wind-driven rain elements as well. We can do up to 8 inches of rain an hour. We even gotten so precise where we can control the size and distribution of the water droplets. I mean, that's how precise we can be. And so what we know, without a doubt, is that when that roof deck gets exposed, over 90% of the water that hits that deck is going inside that house.
And it's because it's leaking in between the seams, right? But
that's exactly right. So the panel seams, going back even on homes that were built some time ago that might have gap decking, when you start to expose any of those seams in the roof substrate, that's just an avenue for water to get in there. And anybody who's been a builder knows how devastating and how pervasive water leakage can be, and how difficult it can be to solve. And so, covering those seams with some sort of either durable underlayment or combination of underlayment and tape, or like Matt's product, is a great way of keeping that water from being able to find an avenue in.
So Matt, is it the typical zip system roof installation meets the fortified standards, or do people have to do something different? Are there additional steps one has to take outside the normal roof sheathing process that would help a home qualify for fortified homes, or is it already done?
So there are a few unique aspects to the installation process associated with fortified, namely the type of fastener that's used, and then also the nailing pattern. That can vary, compared to what is typically done by the builder, but our product is identical. So when you take the zip system panel and tape all the seams with our flashing tape, that meets the sealed roof deck component of fortified roof.
Cool.
Yeah, and Pat, I'll just tap in there a little bit. So there's 3 basic things that have to be done for any fortified roof, whether you're on the coast or you're inland. It doesn't really matter. We have a standard either for coastal or inland applications, but the first thing is, as Matt said, to get that deck secured, right? So get it nailed down, get it sealed up, and then secure the edges. And so what that means is once the sealed roof deck system is in place, whatever roof cover application you're using, whether it's shingles, metal, tile, doesn't really matter. The highest pressures that a roof will see are going to be along the edges, at the eave, if it's a gable roof, up the rake, and then at the ridge. And so we pay particular attention to how those edges are installed. We do have some additional provisions for.
Are you hand sealing those shingles, Fred? Is that the typical way to deal with the edge pressures?
So that's a great question. So hand tabbing is not necessarily required, but the use of a starter strip it is required. So whether that's a manufactured mechanically fastened starter strip or a peel and stick starter strip, there's been a lot of innovation in this space too. There's a couple of manufacturers that have roll out peel and stick starter strips, which means the underside is 100% adhesive. So you roll it out and you press it down. And then they've got the leading edge sealant at the top that helps that edge, that leading edge of the shingle seal down. There's even another manufacturer who has come out with a double side peel and stick starter strip, so where both sides are full adhesive, so you really get great contact and adhesion. And the by and large, most of those products are consistent with Matt's product. The other thing that we do along those edges is we do require drip metal. or edge metal, so that you're protecting that leading edge of the roof decking as well.
Interesting. So, Fred, you touched on it earlier, but it seems like the roof sheathing and the keeping water out in a storm is key to preventing further damage in the house. But what I've always been told is that windows and doors failing are another huge potential problem with especially high wind events, right? It would seem to me that the IBHS would take a greater interest in preventing portals from blowing out in high wind events than they would roof sheathing. But can you explain the rationale?
Yeah, sure. So there's a ton of science. I mean, we're talking about 30 years worth of science that tells us how the progression of loss takes place during a given storm. And so we can tell you with a high degree of certainty based on different wind levels what kind of damage you're going to see. And without a doubt, the very first system that fails is the roof cover, roof sheathing. As the wind speeds get up and you get into things like Category 2 hurricanes or EF2 tornadoes, then you start to see more of those other pressure-related failures, particularly in the openings. And on coastal environments, you get flying debris, so you start wanting to really protect them from large missiles that are flying around. And missiles is maybe a technical term, but that's really anything that can get picked up by the wind and thrown around is a missile. And so, if a opening gets breached, whether it's a front door, a large window, or a garage door, a phenomenon called internal pressurization happens. Back when we all probably started in this industry, some parts of our buildings some buildings anyway, were designed to be either partially enclosed, or even some were designed to be open exposures. But pretty much now everything is built to be fully enclosed. That means all the pressure kept out on the outside of the building. So when an opening gets penetrated, internal pressurization happens where all that air rushes in through that opening and tries to blow the home up like a balloon. Yeah. And, it's a rigid balloon. So it can only take so much. And then when it reaches this capacity, it just blows out. And so you're right. That's why we have the program oriented the way we do. We first deal with the roof, then we deal with the openings, because that's the progression of failure. And then we deal with the more substantive structural connections like the load path.
Interesting. So, Matt, I think you'd agree that zip and other products and tapes to keep the roof intact are only as good as their installation. How can carpenters and builders ensure that the zip system sheathing on the roof is installed correctly and to the Fortified Home standard if you're going for that?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and that's why as a company we put significant resources behind educating the trades that are working with our products every day. So, right now and every day we've got field salespeople and field technical people on job sites, in lumber yards, talking with the trades, and we've seen how even something simple like a pre-construction meeting can have really a significant impact on the quality of installation. So
because you're telling people it matters how they fasten the sheathing, right? And you're probably telling them how many nails they need on the edges and in the field, right?
Sure. So we get into particulars based on what's required in their jurisdiction, but then also just some simple best practices. Some tips and tricks of how to work with our flashing tape, for instance. And so we offer a wide variety of installation instructions, checklists, how-to videos, a number of resources that anybody working with our products can access at any time. And really for us, perhaps the most critical step in the process is paying attention to rolling the tape because it really increases the adhesion to the panel. And so, for the builder and ultimately the homeowner, this is how to get the full benefit of zip system. And then as Fred spoke to, to get the full benefit of a sealed roof deck, you want to make sure that that flashing tape or whichever product is used to seal the seams is fully adhered to the deck. So, we actually worked with IBHS about a year ago, and they performed a demonstration using data from Hurricane Florence. And as Fred mentioned, basically they can take wind patterns, wind speeds, the rate of precipitation, and replicate it at their facility. And so we wanted to know what would happen when you exposed a zip roof deck with sealed seams to that level of stress. And so specifically, we wanted to know if it would keep water out of the attic. And so even under that kind of severe set of circumstances, we found that the zip system panel plus the tape was successful in keeping water out of the home. So it gets back to just that importance of correct installation. The technology is there to deliver great performance, but it's got to be installed correctly.
I was on a project recently that was using your wall panel, and the guy showed me the roller, and it has little Z's as part of the rubber surface, and that lets people know that it's either been rolled or not. And my assumption is that's a good check for the builder and you guys.
Exactly. So this product line has been on the market for about 14 years, and a common question we would get is, I rolled the tape, but how do I know? Or the builder might ask us, hey, I wasn't on the job site the day they were installing the tape. How can I verify that it was actually rolled? And so, we incorporated that little Z into the roller, and it gives you an imprint when the proper amount of pressure is applied. And so,
and it stays there forever, right? So it's a record that the tape was either rolled or not, correct?
So over time, it can release that Z imprint, but certainly at the time that it's done, and for a while afterwards, you can go back and see it. So it's a good way to visually inspect that that the tape was rolled, and then for the person doing the work, giving them the confidence to say that they put enough pressure on it.
Mm. So Matt was just talking about it, Fred, briefly, but so it appears that the IBHS does actually test the products that are part of the Fortified Homes program. Is that correct? Do you guys have to test the things that are part of that?
No, we don't have to test all of them. So we do a combination of things. So there are things like Zip where we have an opportunity to do a demonstration or even a more investigative test where we will test certain products. But we do rely on other testing methodologies like the UL standards, like FM standards, and others, and we will utilize those if they are good predictors of performance. And an exception to that is impact resistance of shingles. For example, we recently launched a new test, an IBHS impact resistance standard, where we developed in a completely new way of testing asphalt shingle performance against hail. We've got a world-class data set on the hardness of hail, the strength of hail, and we've developed a way where
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. My nerdiness will not let me let you continue. But so how are you testing roof shingles for hail damage?
Yeah, so UL and FM both have two widely accepted standards. One is based on a solid sphere of ice, and the other is a steel ball. And they're dropped at a height that allows that sphere to hit terminal velocity, and it bounces off the shingle. And then you investigate the backside of the shingle under those protocols to see if it cracked or broke the backside of the shingle. That's what determines whether a current shingle passes or fails. What makes the IBHS test standard different is we spent years studying real life hail out in the field. We understand its characteristics. We figured out a way to replicate that in the lab, so we can mass produce hailstones now at various sizes, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, and 2 inches, and we shoot it at the shingles. And then we've developed a piece of software that looks at several different modes of damage. Whether a dent was created, what the ridges of the dent are, is it cracked, and what's the granule loss. And so we use those combination of things to come up with a good, better, best rating system. Actually, it's excellent, good, actually excellent, better, or good. And you have to provide, in order to qualify for a fortified high wind and hail standard, you have to use an IBHS rated product that is either excellent or good. And so, you asked the question about testing products. We don't test every single one that it can be used in a fortified home, but where we see a gap where a test needs to be improved or a test doesn't exist, we try to fill that gap.
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating. How much hail can you make?
We can make hundreds or thousands of stones. I'll tell you a funny little story. When we first did this, right, we first figured out how to manufacture hail. It was a manual process, and it took us over 3 months.
So you were making hail ice cubes.
We were injecting a special formulation into a rubber mold day and night for like a whole month. And then we to do 10,000 stones, and we said this is nuts. There's got to be a better way to do that. And so we invented a machine that actually can mass produce it, and so it comes down in a big slug, and there's a metal form that goes around it and presses out these hailstones, and they drop into a freezer. So we can create thousands of stones in a fraction of the time now.
So have
really
you
cool.
found that the previous test standards or test methods were inadequate based on your new methods?
So I think that they aren't necessarily indicative of real world performance. One of the other things that separates how we test our product, the products that we test, and at least in the impact space, is we pull it off of the distribution line. So if I'm a builder and I'm going to buy shingles, I'm getting them from the supplier. I'm not going to the factory and pulling it right off the factory assembly line or the manufacturing line and putting it in through the test. The current tests do that. They take it right off the manufacturing line.
And you think that makes it artificially easy? And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm just wondering, is that a concern?
Well, I think what the concern is that there is an effect once the product goes through the distribution channel. There is an effect on performance. That is something that we have speculated for a long time. And so by testing at that point at the end of the distribution channel, we can then get a better, more predictive result of how that product is going to perform once it's installed. The other thing, I just encourage you and your listeners to keep track of what we're doing on disastersafety.org. We actually have aging farms around the country where we install shingles. We put them on these roofs. We let them age naturally. And then at 5-year intervals, we take certain sections of those roofs out. We bring them back to our test center, and we either run them through a wind test or an impact test or both to look at what are the natural effects of aging, in addition to, hey, what did it look like when it came off out of the distribution channel? So there's lots of that kind of stuff that we do in the background. And one of the things I think that makes Fortified attractive is we take all that hard work, we do all that stuff in the background, and then builders and roofers, they get to just use it. It's not a profit center for IBHS. I'm not charging people hundreds or thousands of dollars to use our program or anything like that. The fees that we charge are minimal. I mean, we're talking about like $45 evaluation fees for people to submit a fortified roof, or $70 for a fortified gold home review. But that's it. I mean, we just want to put builders and contractors in a position to succeed, and that's one of the things that's so intriguing about the Huber products, that especially that zip line. As a builder for a lot of years, if I could take steps out of the process, I didn't have so many things to worry about from a labor perspective, right? The harder, the more complicated things are to put together, the more opportunities for errors there are. And Matt's product takes quite a few of those steps out of that process.
And that is a fantastic segue, because Matt, I want to ask you now about Zip System Building Enclosures also makes a structural sheathing panel with an insulation layer, and point that Fred was just making, is the idea is this is a lot easier to install for builders who are using a conventional methodology than it would to be put on exterior foam insulation or many other out insulation methods, right? This installs very much like a standard sheathing panel, but the cool thing is that there's an insulation layer on the inside. Can you talk a little bit about the sizes available and thicknesses of insulation? And I want to ask you about if you can use this on the roof.
Sure. So we have a version of Zip System called R sheathing, which incorporates a layer of polyiso foam with the 7/16 inch Zip System panel. And so what we were seeing was that as energy codes were continuing to evolve, this type of product became increasingly viable for a number of builders, especially in wall assemblies. And then to your point, more recently, we're seeing growing interest in conditioned attic space, where a combination of air sealing and insulation is being used at the roof deck. And so obviously this is a much different application than a typical vented attic, where the roof is actually designed to promote airflow up from the eaves to the ridge. So for those unvented roofs where the attic is conditioned, we are seeing that Zip R sheathing can be used as an alternative to traditional nail base. So for anyone who isn't familiar with this type of assembly, you can think of it as a multi-layer roof system where you've got a structural roof deck fastened to the framing members. Then you have a layer of polyiso foam on top of that. And then you've got another layer of structural sheathing, which serves as a base for the shingles or the finished roof covering to be fastened to. Then on top of that, you've got an underlayment and then the final roof covering.
And this eliminates a couple of those steps.
Right. So by combining the polyiso foam with that second layer of structural sheathing plus the WRB, you eliminate what would otherwise be three separate product lines from three separate manufacturers, and likely are not backed by a single warranty, which of course we offer.
One of the interesting things I've heard about putting foam insulation between the framing and the sheathing layer is the quality of double shear with regard to fasteners, right? They're not made to work in that way. Have you guys figured out how to help people get the engineering so that their roof sheathing, potentially with an insulation layer between the sheathing and the framing, can satisfy the racking resistance needed for a building to stand and to resist winds?
So the structural layer is going to be that first layer that's fastened to the rafters or the trusses, and then our product, in this case the Zip R sheathing that's going on top of it, really is functioning as a nail base.
I gotcha. Interesting. So, and do you see wider adoption? Will you ever imagine that you won't need that second sheathing layer? Will it ever be possible to put the Zip R directly on the framing in a roof application?
Yeah, that's a question that we get. It's something that we're looking into right now. From where I sit, if I had to crystal ball gaze, I would say that this type of application seems to be gaining traction in the marketplace. So I don't see it moving backwards from this point. And as it becomes more viable for builders, I think a number of innovations would occur.
More commonly, this is used in walls, though, and obviously the country has different requirements for the amount of exterior insulation you need, depending on your climate, right? Do you guys offer different thicknesses to help the builders in various parts of the country?
We do. So we have 4 different thicknesses today, delivering R3, 6, 9, and 12.
Fred, do you see any problems with these sheathing on top of foam layer products with regard to a home's structural integrity?
Well, I don't think I'd go so far as to say problems, but I do think it brings up a good point where, there are often trade-offs that are made, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And so as we see builders pursuing tighter buildings, better insulation, better sustainability characteristics, I think we do want to make sure that people are taking into consideration what are the potential trade-offs that you're making from a durability perspective. And so while we recognize that there are trends in that direction, we do want to make sure that people are aware of what are the potential consequences of that decision, and how can you put together a combination of products that are compatible with one another without sacrificing durability for sustainability or sustainability for durability. You can accomplish both, but it takes awareness. And that's another thing that we try to do.
I think you'd agree.
Well, for sure. I mean, look, I mean, at the end of the day, the more products that go into a house, the more money is going to be invested in that house. But, I think there's lots of folks that are out there that understand first cost versus, life cycle costs. Right. And so, they're particularly when it comes to durability, there is definitely something to be said for you either pay the piper now or you pay the piper later, right? Mother Nature is unforgiving. And if you have a flaw or a weakness or vulnerability in your building, it will find it and it will exploit it. There is no doubt about it. And so, you are either going to be faced with, recovering and having the expense of that recovery, even if there's insurance involved. Oftentimes there's a deductible, and there's also the most people just don't appreciate the disruption that comes along with recovery, and how inconvenient it is. And you go from being in a 2,000. I saw thousands of homeowners in coastal Alabama that are going from 2,000 square foot home down to a 400 square foot apartment or hotel room for an extended period of time. It is an uncomfortable place to be. By contrast, folks that take into account things like durability and use a program like Fortified We had over a 90% success rate of little to no damage in our 17,000 homes that were there. So, those folks are recovering faster. So anyway, getting back to your point, Patrick, I think that the important thing that you mentioned there is that you need to be considering, if I'm making this decision, what do I have to also consider when it comes to durability? Am I sacrificing durability to get this outcome? You can, as you mentioned, you can engineer your way through it. You can make good decisions, but knowledge is the key, and we're here to help you do that.
So Matt, circling back to the importance of maintaining a roof's integrity, all the time, right? Not just in storms. What are the things you see people getting wrong, and what kind of where should builders be paying more attention to their roofers with regard to maintaining long-lasting roof assemblies?
There's some simple best practices that can really make an impact, not only the long-term performance of the home, but even benefits that occur during the construction cycle. So, when it comes to our system, things like, shingling the tape, it's not required, but it's that additional best practice that can be taken. Paying attention to certain details, like if there's a subfascia, taping that transition from the edge of the roof to the subfascia, just paying attention to any areas where water could get
blow
into the
in,
attic.
right? You're trying to guess where it's going to blow into the structure. Is that correct?
Exactly. So something I'll hear frequently on the job site is kind of this perspective of think like a water droplet. How is it going to move when it hits the roof deck, and then how do you address that through the installation? So, a lot of the best practices that we're talking about, they don't add significant time or expense in materials or installation time. It's what Fred said. First of all, being knowledgeable of the topic, and I think that's where companies like Huber and organizations like IBHS can do a lot and are doing a lot to make sure that people are in the know. And then when it comes time to the installation, oftentimes it takes just as long to install it wrong as it does to install it correctly. And so,
certainly more expensive to fix if you install it wrong.
Nobody likes fixing stuff. It's like you got enough work to do just building the thing. Like that, fixing it is just not what you want to be doing.
Really, your best opportunity to get it right is during that initial installation, and so that's where we really focus a lot of efforts.
Fred, so tell me, how does a house get a fortified designation? Is that something the builder gets? Is that something the homeowner gets later? Like, how is it documented? Can you just explain how, if somebody wanted to have a fortified house, I'm guessing the reason they would want a fortified house, in addition to like having a more survivable structure, is it's going to lower their insurance premiums. Am I right about that?
Yeah, well, it certainly can. I mean, there's the peace of mind is in being prepared, dealing with that anxiety that comes with not being prepared is certainly the first level of value. But the second level can be absolutely incentives that are available in different markets. There's several states that have mandated incentives: Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma.
And so in those Gulf Coast states, is it just along the Gulf or is it statewide?
So some states take a coastal approach, but Alabama, for example, has extended their credits in the entire state. North Carolina, it's on the coast. Oklahoma, which is not a coastal state, but coincidentally has some of the highest insurance rates across the country because they are
tornadoes, right?
Tornado Alley, yeah. But their credits are available statewide. There are other incentives like building permit review fee rebates, expedited plan review. There are different states that employ different tactics to get people to see the value in being resilient. But you asked about the process, and so the process can be really very simple. So it is available. The fortified designation is available to both new construction and existing construction. So it's possible to get a fortified designation in either case. Usually, as a homeowner or a builder, you are making the decision that you want your home to be fortified, and then you start assembling your team. And so you are required to work with a fortified evaluator. It's similar to the green building kinds of verification process.
Where you'd have a HERS rater, for example, and this person would help you navigate getting your house to the standard that you're dealing with.
Yeah, we call them fortified evaluators, but essentially they're there to act as a guide and to collect the documentation. The things that we are documenting and verifying take place at the common times in the construction where you're conducting your normal building code inspections. So like at rough framing, right before you dry in or you close in for your sheetrock, and then at the end when all of your shutters and all of your garage doors and other fixtures are installed. So it can fold neatly into the typical build cycle in the critical path. I come from a high volume builder background. That's where I started my career. I know the importance of schedule. So we really try to make sure that those things can be done in a way that doesn't disrupt the schedule. But
and
so
how are the folks who are doing these evaluations trained? Is it you guys who are training them, or do they have some construction background, or does it vary?
So both things apply. We like to pull together folks professionals that understand the construction trades. They understand the vocabulary, they understand the materials that are used, and then we bring them into a training program where we give them specific knowledge about what we are looking at, what we're looking for, and we train them to be able to perform that verification service.
Interesting. And you said it doesn't cost a lot typically.
Yeah, so becoming certified, depending on whether you're a builder, a roofer, or an evaluator, there's a different level of investment that's required there. But as far as what IBHS charges for participation in the program, generally speaking, to the homeowner or to the builder who's participating, if you're going for a fortified roof designation, it's just $45. If you're going for silver or gold, it's just $70. That's what we collect to just review the file and issue the certificate. The trades and the evaluator, they set their own fees, and those rates are negotiable. But it does not need to be cost prohibitive for sure to accomplish a fortified designation. And we try to make it as friction free as possible. But I will tell you, that there's an absolute opportunity and the need for additional training. So as companies like Matt's, with Huber and as a manufacturer, as they lean in to give installers knowledge about installing their product, as you guys are bringing more information to folks about where they can go and find additional resources to become more knowledgeable, that's critically important. I mean, we see every single day products being installed incorrectly. And that is something that absolutely is fixable. I mean, that's a knowledge problem.
Yeah.
That's not a limitation of product or the environment being too harsh. It's just a knowledge problem. So we can fill that gap. And so we make a lot of resources available through our fortifiedhome.org site. We have a lot of checklists that can be used up there. Whether you've been through our training or not, you can take our checklist. You can use the checklist to help make your project move along better and take into account the fortified requirements. And so once you've made the decision to fortify, you go through the building process, you work with your evaluator, the evaluator submits the evaluation forms on your behalf. And then I have a team of experienced building professionals, both engineers and construction professionals, that review each and every file. And then we issue a certificate. That certificate is the proof of compliance. And that's how you unlock those incentives that we talked about.
Excellent. So, Matt, how should one contact Huber if they want to up their crew's game? How do folks who want to do a good job teach them to do a better job with Huber's help?
Sure. So I mentioned we've got a field sales team nationally across the U.S. and we have some presence in Canada as well. And so, one option is to contact the local Huber rep. Meeting with builders in person and today virtually is something we're doing every day. We have a map on our website that has all that information broken down by state. We also have real life people here in Charlotte who do respond to any direct messages coming through social media. So they can follow us at Huber Wood and actually get a response from somebody.
That's fantastic. It's been great talking to you guys. So I kind of springing this on you, but when I interview folks, I often ask them about their own homes. So Fred, do you have a fortified roof on your house?
I'm happy to say that I have a fortified home. Yes, I live in Florida, and I'm about a mile from the Atlantic Ocean, just that way. And just 2 years ago when Hurricane Dorian was threatening, I was very thankful that I have a fortified home. But yes, I practice what I preach.
How about you, Matt? Do you have a zip-R sheathing on your house or a zip system wall sheathing?
I sure wish I did. As a quick story, so I live in Charlotte, which is a couple hundred miles inland, and A few years ago, we had the remnants of a hurricane. So it was not even tropical storm by that point, come through Charlotte. And I had one shingle pop, and that resulted in about a $2,000 repair. So I have.
And a huge hassle in your life, too. Let's not forget about that, right? Fred's made that point earlier.
You got it.
I lived this. I've seen it in my own home, fortunately. So one day when I grow up, I want a zip roof on my house and a sheathing on the wall.
It's been a pleasure talking to you guys. Anything you want to tell or ask our audience, Matt?
Really, this has been great. And, I'm sincere when I say that we've got people who really want to help, installation improve out on job sites. And so, follow us on Instagram, reach out to us by phone, email, and we will be in touch that way.
Awesome. How about you, Fred? Anything you want to tell or ask our listeners?
Yeah. So, we did talk about training. We talked about transfer of knowledge, and I'm going to drop a third website on you. It's called fortifiedwise.com. The environment the way it is, and with COVID forcing everybody to work remotely, we've moved a lot of our content virtual, and we're going to continue to expand that library. So fortifiedwise.com is where you can go and access those training courses. Some are available for free, some are paid courses, but I just want to encourage people to go there. And Pat, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. And I think you asked some really good questions, things I know would be important to me as a builder. So I hope your audience finds it informative and decides that they want to learn more.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Matt and Fred for joining us. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody, and happy building.